Hey there! Welcome back to Revenge with Maria. Hope you're doing great today. Let's jump right into the story. Nathan Parker adjusted the cuffs of his tailored navy blue suit as he stepped out of the sleek black sedan, the cool Manhattan air brushing against his face. The towering glass skyline of New York reflected the city's constant pulse, fast-paced, relentless, and unforgiving. He had built a life that matched this city, one of success, precision, and control. Yet, standing in front of the penthouse he shared with his wife, Jessica, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in his gut. Something was wrong. For years, Nathan had believed in the illusion of the perfect marriage. He and Jessica were the epitome of a power couple, both successful in the financial world, both driven, both admired. They attended elite charity galas, hosted extravagant business dinners, and their names were whispered with admiration in corporate circles. From the outside, they had it all: wealth, prestige, and influence. But illusions are fragile. Nathan had begun noticing cracks in their foundation. It started subtly, the way Jessica would pull away slightly when he kissed her goodbye in the mornings. Once she would lean into him, resting a hand on his chest, eyes warm with affection. Now her touches were fleeting, almost mechanical. Then came the changes in her schedule. She had always worked long hours, but lately she was coming home later and later. At first, she used work as an excuse. "Major deal closing soon, I need to stay late." But Nathan wasn't an idiot. He had spent years analyzing numbers and people, reading between the lines of what wasn't being said. Jessica had changed. Her phone never left her side. She had once casually left it on the counter, answering messages without hesitation. Now, it was always face down, locked, notifications silenced. If he walked into a room, she would tilt the screen away, her expression unreadable. Their conversations, once filled with plans for the future, had become surface level. Nathan would ask how her day was, and she would respond with generic, uninspired answers. It was fine. Just a long day at the office. Nothing interesting. The woman who once couldn't wait to share every detail of her career victories now acted as if her days were too mundane to discuss. But the biggest shift? Jessica had stopped caring. Nathan had always believed that relationships, much like businesses, required investment. He had put in the time, the effort, the commitment. But Jessica? It was as if she had already checked out. One night, as they sat across from each other in their penthouse dining room, Nathan studied her. She was scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging him. The soft candlelight cast shadows on her face, highlighting her sharp features, ones he had once traced with his fingertips. "Long day?" he asked, keeping his tone light. Jessica hummed in response, not bothering to look up. Nathan exhaled slowly. "You seem distracted lately." She finally glanced at him, blinking as if she had forgotten he was there. "Huh?" "You barely talk to me anymore," he said, setting his glass of wine down. "Is something wrong?" Jessica sighed, setting her phone aside. "Nathan, not everything has to be some big issue. I'm just tired." He held her gaze, searching for something, anything that felt familiar. But all he saw was detachment. "You used to tell me everything," he said quietly. Jessica's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe I don't feel the need to anymore." Nathan's fingers tightened around his glass. There it was, a confession disguised as indifference. She didn't need to share her life with him anymore, because she had already started living a separate one. A few weeks later, Nathan was working late in his home office when he overheard Jessica on the phone in the bedroom. Her voice was low, hushed, filled with something he hadn't heard in a long time: excitement. He wasn't the type to eavesdrop, but something about the way she spoke made him pause. "I just need one night," she was saying, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "Nathan will never know. He doesn't care anymore." Nathan's heartbeat slowed. His mind processed the words in fragments. One night. He will never know. He doesn't care anymore. She was planning something. He could hear the confidence in her voice, the way she spoke so assuredly, as if she was the one in control. For the first time in his life, Nathan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Cold rage. Jessica had spent their entire marriage building an image of perfection, of control, of superiority. She believed she was untouchable, but she had just made a fatal miscalculation. Nathan wasn't weak. And now she was about to find out just how much of a mistake she had made. The next morning, Nathan didn't say anything. He didn't confront her, didn't demand explanations. Instead, he kissed her cheek before heading to work, acting as if nothing had changed. Jessica smiled, oblivious, believing her lie had been successfully planted. She had no idea that while she was busy plotting her escape, Nathan was already planning her downfall. That day, he made a call. "Ryan," he said to his best friend, his voice unreadable. "I need your help. It's time to burn it all down." Ryan was silent for a moment before replying, "Tell me everything." Nathan exhaled, a slow smirk forming on his lips. Jessica thought she could play this game. She thought she had won before the game even started. But what she didn't realize? She had just made her final move, and Nathan was about to end the game. Nathan Parker sat in his office, the sound of the city humming faintly through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His fingers tapped against the glass of bourbon in his hand, his mind racing as he replayed Jessica's words over and over again. "I just need one night. Nathan will never know. He doesn't care anymore." She had spoken with such certainty, such arrogance. She truly believed she had already won, that he was too blind or too indifferent to see what was happening right under his nose. She thought he wouldn't fight back. She thought wrong. The morning after overhearing Jessica's betrayal, Nathan didn't confront her. He didn't demand explanations, didn't yell, didn't beg. Instead, he played his part perfectly, acting as if he were still the same clueless, accommodating husband she had convinced herself he was. At breakfast, he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek, feeling her stiffen slightly at the unexpected gesture. "You're working late again tonight?" he asked, keeping his tone light. Jessica glanced up from her coffee, her expression unreadable. "Yeah, a big client meeting." Nathan nodded. "Got it. Hope it goes well." If she noticed the way his voice lacked its usual warmth, she didn't let it show. By the time she walked out the door, he was already setting his plan in motion. Nathan had always been a meticulous man. He didn't make decisions based on assumptions, and he wasn't about to start now. If he was going to take Jessica down, he needed evidence. Undeniable, irrefutable proof. He called Ryan Foster, his closest friend and a forensic accountant. Ryan picked up after 2 rings. "Tell me everything," Ryan said, skipping the pleasantries. Nathan exhaled slowly. "Jessica's cheating, and I need to ruin her." There was a beat of silence before Ryan let out a low chuckle. "Damn. All right, what's the plan?" Nathan told him everything he had overheard, every shift in Jessica's behavior, every red flag he had ignored until now. Ryan, ever the strategist, listened carefully before responding. "First things first. We get proof. I'll handle the financials. You focus on tracking her movements." Nathan knew exactly where to start. That afternoon, he installed a GPS tracker on Jessica's car. Then he went through their phone bill records, pulling every number she had been texting and calling in the past few months. One number appeared far too frequently, always late at night or during her supposed client meetings. He ran it through a database. Jason Wallace. Nathan's jaw tightened as the name flashed on his screen. Jessica wasn't just cheating. She was cheating with her boss. How cliché. For the next 3 weeks, Nathan let Jessica believe she was still in control. He continued acting normal, if a little distant, ensuring she didn't suspect a thing. Meanwhile, Ryan worked behind the scenes, pulling financial records and uncovering discrepancies in Jessica's company transactions. It didn't take long before he found something interesting. "She's been making unreported offshore deposits," Ryan said one night over drinks. Not huge amounts, but enough to raise questions if her firm found out. Nathan smirked. Perfect, let's make sure they do. But he wasn't done yet. Through a private investigator, Nathan obtained security footage from a high-end hotel downtown, showing Jessica entering and leaving with Jason Wallace on multiple occasions. Combined with screenshots of their explicit text messages, the evidence was airtight. Nathan stared at the files on his laptop, the weight of betrayal solidifying into something colder. He had everything he needed. Now, it was time to strike. Jessica walked into their penthouse glowing. Nathan could see it in the way she moved, the way she tossed her designer handbag onto the couch, the way she hummed under her breath. She had just returned from sleeping with another man, and she had no idea her entire world was about to collapse. Nathan poured himself a drink leaning against the kitchen counter. "How was work?" he asked casually. Jessica barely spared him a glance as she kicked off her heels. "Exhausting," she sighed. "You know how these meetings go." Nathan nodded, swirling the bourbon in his glass. Must have been quite the meeting. Jessica hesitated for half a second before regaining her composure. "Yeah, long night." Nathan smiled. "Good thing I already know the truth, then." Jessica froze. Slowly, she turned to face him. "What?" Nathan took a slow sip of his drink, letting the silence stretch between them. Then, with calculated precision, he reached for his phone, tapped a button, and slid it across the counter. The screen lit up. A video played. Jessica watched in horror as she and Jason Wallace appeared on screen, entering a hotel room together, her face drained of color. Nathan tilted his head. "That doesn't look like a client meeting to me, Jess." Jessica's lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time in their marriage, she had nothing to say. Nathan exhaled slowly, as if savoring the moment. "I gave you every opportunity to tell me the truth," he continued, his voice eerily calm. "But you just kept lying, thinking I'd never find out, thinking I was too stupid to see it." Jessica's hands trembled. "Nathan, I can explain." He held up a hand. You don't get to talk. You don't get to spin this into something it's not. I know everything, Jessica." She looked at him, eyes wide with desperation. "It was just a mistake." Nathan let out a short, humorless laugh. "A mistake? You planned this. You came home, looked me in the eyes, and lied to me for weeks. Months, probably." Jessica stepped forward, but Nathan took a step back, keeping the distance between them. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We can fix this." Nathan smirked. "Oh, we're going to fix it, but not in the way you think." Jessica's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Nathan took another sip of his bourbon, enjoying the way her confidence had finally shattered. "You'll see soon enough," he said. And with that, he walked past her, heading to his office and closing the door behind him. Jessica stood in the middle of their luxurious penthouse, her entire world beginning to crumble. Nathan had seen the truth. And now? Now she was about to feel the consequences. Jessica sat on the edge of their bed, gripping the sheets in her fists, her breathing uneven. Nathan's words echoed in her mind. "You'll see soon enough." What did he mean? She had seen the look in his eyes, not anger, not heartbreak, but something far worse. Cold indifference. Nathan wasn't devastated. He wasn't raging or begging for explanations. He was calculating, and that terrified her. Jessica had always been in control, in her career, in her social life, and, she had thought, in her marriage. She had taken Nathan's stability for granted, assuming that he would always be there, always be the dependable husband who never questioned her. But for the first time in their marriage, she had no idea what he was thinking. And that realization sent a chill down her spine. The next morning, Nathan acted as if nothing had happened. He got dressed, made coffee, and left for work without so much as a glance in Jessica's direction. She tried to speak to him. "Nathan, can we talk about this?" He didn't even look up. Later. Then he walked out the door, leaving her drowning in uncertainty. That was his first strike. By mid-afternoon, Jessica began to feel the first real consequences of her betrayal. She went to grab lunch at her favorite cafe and handed over her black Amex Platinum card, only to have it declined. She frowned. Try it again. The cashier did, still declined. Confused, she pulled out her phone and checked their shared bank accounts. 0. Her hands grew clammy as she scrolled through each one. Every single account had been drained, or more accurately, reallocated into one of Nathan's private trusts. Panic surged through her. She called the bank, demanding answers only to be told, "Mrs. Parker, your name has been removed from all joint accounts. You no longer have authorization." Her blood ran cold. Nathan had shut her out financially. That was his second strike. Jessica rushed back home, her mind spiraling. She had been so sure that she could salvage this, convince Nathan that what she did was just a mistake, that they could work through it. But this wasn't the reaction of a man who wanted to save his marriage. This was the reaction of a man who was burning everything to the ground. Frantically, she went to her personal laptop to check her work emails, needing some sense of normalcy. She logged in, and immediately froze. There, sitting at the top of her inbox, was an email from her company's compliance department. Subject: Urgent, Financial Investigation. Notification: Jessica's vision blurred as she skimmed the email. Dear Ms. Parker, it has come to our attention that several financial discrepancies have been flagged in recent audits. In accordance with company policy, an internal investigation has been launched. You are required to meet with HR and legal counsel tomorrow at 10 a.m. to discuss the findings. Failure to comply may result in immediate termination. Jessica's stomach dropped. How? How did they find out? Then, as the panic settled in, she realized the only possible answer: Nathan. She had always handled her financial dealings carefully, making sure that the offshore accounts she used to move company money for personal expenses were well hidden. But she had made one mistake. She had assumed Nathan was just another oblivious husband. She had never expected him to fight back like this. That was his third strike. Jessica barely slept that night. She arrived at work exhausted, her usual confidence crumbling. The meeting with compliance was brutal. They had receipts for everything: the fraudulent transactions, the unauthorized wire transfers, the falsified reports. She tried to talk her way out of it, but it was clear they had already made up their minds. She wasn't fired yet, but she was placed on immediate suspension pending further investigation, which meant that after tonight's gala event, the biggest night of the year for her company, her career would likely be over. But Jessica was still holding on to hope. If she could just get through the gala, she could find a way to fix this. She just had to survive tonight. But Nathan? Nathan had other plans. The ballroom of the Grand Manhattan Hotel was packed with some of the most powerful people in the finance world. Dressed in an elegant emerald green evening gown, Jessica forced herself to smile, pretending as if her entire world wasn't crashing down around her. Nathan had arrived separately, looking as composed as ever in a black tailored suit, a glass of whiskey in hand. He had barely acknowledged her all evening, and that terrified her more than anything. Then, just as she was preparing to give her speech on stage, the massive screens behind her flickered to life. At first, she thought it was a technical issue. Then she saw it: text messages, screenshots, hotel security footage. Jessica's heart stopped as every single person in the room turned to look at her. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the images flashed across the screen. Jessica entering a luxury hotel with Jason Wallace. Messages between them discussing their secret meetings. Bank statements linking her fraudulent activities. And then, the final blow: an email sent anonymously to her company's board, detailing her affair and financial misconduct. Silence. Utter, devastating silence. Jessica's body went numb. She turned toward Nathan, horrified. He just raised his glass. Then, with a slight smirk, he took a slow sip. He had planned this. He had waited for the perfect moment, in front of the most influential people in her world, to destroy her. Jessica's hands trembled as she stumbled off the stage, the sound of whispers and judgmental stares closing in on her like a noose. She had lost everything. That was Nathan's final strike, and he had played it perfectly. Jessica sat in the back seat of the Blacktown car, her breathing uneven, her pulse hammering in her ears. The gala had been a complete disaster. The whispers, the shocked expressions, the looks of judgment from some of the most powerful people in the financial world, all of it had been orchestrated by Nathan. Her career was over. Her reputation destroyed. Her hands clenched into fists as she replayed the scene in her head. The massive screen displaying her text messages, financial fraud, and hotel visits with Jason Wallace. All of it had unfolded in real time before a room full of industry titans. Nathan had planned every detail. He hadn't confronted her with anger. He hadn't yelled. No, he had waited until he could humiliate her in the most devastating way possible. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing the nausea away as the driver pulled up to their penthouse. Except, as she stepped out of the car, her heart dropped. The doorman hesitated before meeting her gaze. "Mrs. Parker, I'm sorry, but you're not authorized to enter." Jessica's stomach twisted. "What?" The doorman looked uncomfortable, glancing at the security guards flanking the entrance. "Mr. Parker changed the access list this afternoon. You've been removed." She staggered back, her breath catching in her throat. "That's impossible." Nathan had locked her out of her own home. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. No, this wasn't happening. She grabbed her phone, calling Nathan. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Her chest tightened. She felt the eyes of everyone around her, the security, the doorman, the passing pedestrians, all watching her fall from grace in real time. Her world was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. While Jessica was standing outside the penthouse in utter humiliation, Jason Wallace was experiencing his own reckoning. Earlier that afternoon, while he was still sipping expensive whiskey in his executive office, an email had landed in the inboxes of every board member, compliance officer, and major client at his firm. It contained evidence of fraudulent transactions, unauthorized expense reports, and worst of all, his affair with Jessica Parker. The fallout was immediate. Jason was called into an emergency meeting with the board, where his CEO sat across from him with a printed stack of incriminating evidence. "Care to explain this?" his CEO asked, tossing a photo of Jason leaving a luxury hotel with Jessica. Jason's face paled. This is ridiculous." "Save it," the CEO snapped. "We've already reviewed your financial transactions. You funneled company money into personal trips. You engaged in unethical behavior with a fellow executive. And now, we have clients threatening to sever ties because of this scandal." Jason swallowed hard. Look, I can fix this." "You're done," the CEO cut him off. "Your termination is effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Jason stared in shock. 1 minute he had been on top of the world, successful, untouchable. Now, jobless, disgraced. His wife had already filed for divorce, taken the house, and frozen their joint assets. The life he had built, gone. Jason had lost everything. Jessica didn't know where to go. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, her mind spinning. Nathan had taken her home, her money, her reputation. She had spent years believing she was smarter than everyone around her, believing she was untouchable. And yet Nathan had outplayed her at every turn. She needed to fix this. She drove across the city to Nathan's private office, hoping, praying, that she could reason with him. By the time she arrived, it was nearly midnight. The building was empty except for the security desk. She rushed inside. "I need to see my husband," she said, breathless. The guard checked his monitor. "Mr. Parker left 2 hours ago." Jessica's stomach clenched. "Wait," she said, voice shaky. "Do you know where he went?" The guard hesitated before nodding toward the security monitors. Jessica's gaze followed his, landing on the footage of Nathan leaving the building. He wasn't alone. A woman was with him. Jessica's heart stopped. She recognized her immediately. Olivia Bennett, Nathan's former colleague. A woman Jessica had always belittled, someone she never considered a threat. But there she was, standing beside Nathan, smiling as they stepped into a private car together. Jessica's vision blurred. Nathan had already moved on. And she? She had nothing left. The next morning, Jessica's lawyer called. She scrambled to answer, thinking she still had a chance to negotiate something. Anything. "Jessica," the lawyer said carefully, "we received the divorce settlement this morning." She exhaled sharply. "Finally. Okay, let's go over what I'm getting." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Jessica." The lawyer sighed. "You're not getting anything." Jessica's blood ran cold. "What?" Nathan had an ironclad prenuptial agreement. Given the infidelity evidence he presented, you don't have any legal ground to contest it. She froze. "But he can't just—" "He can. And he did." Jessica's world tilted. No money, no property, no assets. Nathan had left her with nothing. Tears burned in her eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Nathan was supposed to be devastated, supposed to fight for her, supposed to want her back. Instead, he had erased her from his life. The final scene. Nathan's new life. Nathan sat on a rooftop terrace, a glass of bourbon in hand, as he watched the sunset over Manhattan. Across from him, Olivia smiled. "You finally look at peace," she said, tilting her head. Nathan exhaled, letting the last remnants of his past fade away. "I think I am." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Jessica's name flashed across the screen. For a moment, he considered answering. Then, with a small smirk, he simply deleted the message and blocked the number. Without hesitation. Without regret. He raised his glass, clinking it lightly against Olivia's. To new beginnings. To freedom. And to never looking back. Nathan Parker stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his new penthouse, looking out over the glittering Manhattan skyline. The city buzzed with energy, but for the first time in years, his mind was completely clear. He wasn't weighed down by betrayal, by deceit, or by the suffocating presence of a woman who had spent years lying to his face. Jessica was gone. And the best part? She had nothing left. Nathan took a slow sip of his bourbon, the warm burn spreading through his chest as he reflected on the absolute perfection of his revenge. He hadn't just exposed her affair. He hadn't just humiliated her. He had systematically dismantled every single thing she thought made her powerful. Now, she was broke, jobless, and watching her world collapse in real time. And as for him, he was thriving. Across the city, in a tiny studio apartment, Jessica sat curled up on a worn-out couch, staring blankly at the eviction notice on her coffee table. Final payment due, $2,750. Status, overdue. She had been scraping by for the last few months, desperately trying to rebuild her life, but everything was falling apart faster than she could fix it. No company would hire her. No investors would touch her. Her social circle had abandoned her the moment the scandal broke. Jason had vanished, leaving her to face the wreckage alone. Her phone vibrated on the counter. She lunged for it, her fingers trembling. Maybe it was a job offer. Maybe someone was willing to give her a second chance. But when she looked at the screen, her heart sank. It was a news alert. Former financial executive Jessica Parker declares bankruptcy amid scandal fallout. Her breath hitched. This couldn't be happening. She had always been the woman on top, the one people envied, the one with the perfect life. Now she was just another disgraced ex-wife with nothing to her name. And Nathan, he was still winning, Nathan closed the last file on his desk, feeling the satisfying weight of a deal well done. His private firm had just secured a multi-million-dollar investment, solidifying his position as one of the most sought-after consultants in the financial sector. After walking away from his marriage, he had poured his focus into his own empire, no longer shackled by Jessica's manipulative games, and as his professional life soared, his personal life had never been better. Ethan had been his greatest source of pride. His son, once caught between the chaos of his parents' crumbling marriage, had flourished in his father's care. Now, a rising basketball star with a scholarship offer on the table, Ethan had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with his mother. One evening, as they sat in their apartment watching a Knicks game, Ethan turned to his father, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about her?" he asked. Nathan knew exactly who he meant. He took a sip of his drink before shaking his head. Not anymore. Ethan nodded, as if that was the answer he had been hoping for. "Good. She never deserved you anyway." Nathan smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "I know." It was in that moment that he realized he had truly moved on. Jessica was nothing more than a lesson, a warning about the kind of woman he would never let into his life again. One night, as Nathan was leaving his office, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Jessica. For a brief moment, he considered ignoring it, but then curiosity got the better of him. He answered. There was a beat of silence before her voice came through, small and trembling. "Nathan ... He waited, saying nothing. I made a mistake," she continued. "I never should have hurt you. I don't know what I was thinking. Please, I just need to see you. To talk." Nathan let out a slow exhale, not even remotely surprised. Jessica had always believed that she could manipulate her way back into anything. She thought she could pull the same tricks that had worked before. But this time, she had no leverage. Nathan let the silence stretch between them before finally speaking. "You made your choice," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Now, live with it." Jessica let out a choked sob. "Nathan, please." He hung up. Then without hesitation he blocked her number. Jessica Parker was officially erased from his life. For good. Weeks later, Nathan sat at a rooftop bar, a glass of whiskey in hand, as he watched the sun dip below the skyline. Across from him, Olivia leaned forward with a teasing smile. "You seem more relaxed these days," she observed. Nathan chuckled. "I guess I am." She tilted her head. "No more ghosts from the past." Nathan met her gaze, realizing that for the first time in years, he felt weightless. No anger, no resentment, just peace. "Not a single one," he said. He took a slow sip of his drink, letting the last remnants of his past fade away. Jessica had been a storm that almost drowned him, but he had survived. And now, he was finally free. Nathan raised his glass, toasting to new beginnings. And this time, there was nothing left to hold him back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment below, and of course, subscribe for more.